So I think about how years ago, how we came from an ape to where we are now. And I think, of course, mushrooms growing out of a cow pack were involved, or someone just eating a bit of tree bark, which would be known as the ayahuasca plant, or somebody licking the frog, eating the frog by mistake. Like, when you think about what the power of these drugs do now, and you think how we evolved so quickly from ape to who we are, no doubt psychedelics are involved.
We're so conditioned to be afraid. Fear of the unknown, fear of what can go wrong, fear of who's going to come and kill me, fear of what I'm going to do that's going to hurt myself or somebody else. I don't mean sit in a field and stare at a daisy. Perfectly intelligent, wise people who can be aware that there are dangers, can be aware that there are things that can go wrong, and at the same time say, but we're going to chance it anyway. We're going to risk collaboration. We're going to risk creation. That's a balanced approach that actually can create new ways of being. That's what has to happen in order for us to evolve and to get better.
Shit and the good in life together. So sometimes I wake up and I've got no pain. Sometimes I wake up, I've got a stiff neck. Oh, for fuck's sake, what am I going to do? I move on with the pain rather than, oh, why can't life just be good all the time? It is that balance of there's a storm and it wipes your house out and you've just done the garden and you've got to do it again. And then when it's really sunny, you enjoy the garden. The wisdom of life says it is both at all times. Don't focus on either one. Ride the wave and stay neutral.
Yes, it's really, really good to pay attention to what I put in my body. Am I exercising? Am I just walking? Am I just out in nature? Am I under the sky? All those things are super, super important. And as soon as we become obsessive, here in the US, I think in the Western world, in the whatever developed quote unquote world, we're just obsessive about, I have to have this, I need this, I'll be happy if this. It's all upside down. It's not that. It's the balance that you were talking about.
Just quickly, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who still listens to the podcast. I started 4 years ago, and since then I've had over 1 million downloads. I get 5,000 downloads per month, and I've had over 200 different guests. So a massive thank you to everyone who still listens. If you could please do me a favour, if you could rate and review the podcast, that would be amazing because it helps get the podcast out to new, conscious people like yourself. And my goal is to awaken as many people around the world. You can also follow me on Instagram. It's YesKingOliver. Should you wish to see what I get up to on my day-to-day moments. Back to the episode. So earlier this year, I did my first psychedelic and it was LSD. And I'd never done any psychedelics before. I'd done mushrooms a few times, but this was truly something else. And the more and more podcasts I listen to, the more people in the medical field are talking about the benefits of these drugs like LSD and how it essentially can cure or fix or adjust or move months and months and months of therapy within like a session. It's that powerful. And so when I did it, it really did unlock like wounds in me that were just stuck. And I had the answers, but it wasn't presenting itself with action. I had it, it's information, but I wasn't feeling it and taking advantage of it. And I think about everyone else in this world who is stuck. And I think about how those drugs are banned pretty much, everywhere you go. And I look at how society is going and how we're just all desperate for the same thing, which is essentially being free from our own head. And yet this drug has the ability to do that. And it's like if every human being just took a small dose of LSD once, how different the world would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, the practice of going within, whatever somebody can do that is helpful for them to go within and unlock what is stuck. You were talking about, I had the information, but it wasn't like I couldn't get it to integrate and move. Like I know that feeling of feeling stuck. And there are people who do this with meditation. There are people who do this with plant medicine ceremony. There are people who do this with psychedelics. Whatever does it. Do you know what I mean? Like I've been in drum circles, I've been in beautiful sweat lodge ceremonies, I've been in plant medicine ceremonies, I've been in deep meditation retreats. And in all of those cases, whatever I can do to take this thing in here that's so busy, 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 and get unlocked in my body, whether it's trauma or just emotion, just feeling. Like we're so cut off from our bodies and our feelings in the Western culture. Indigenous cultures, older cultures, ancient cultures, they weren't split the way we are. We are so in our heads and so disconnected. So for me, it's all about going within and getting unlocked, like you were talking about.
So from your experience, whether it's a sweat lodge, the frog, Cambodia, whatever it's called, right? Sound bath, breath work, meditation, yoga, ice bath, LSD, mushrooms. Out of all the things that you've done, what would you say is the shortcut to, okay, if I could choose one to get the quickest and best results, what would you say it is?
It's a great question. Here's my approach to that. For me, the way in is not always going to be the way that I'm going to be changed. Like I need something to open the door, but for real, for me and for the people that I work with, it's an ongoing integration of what gets shown to me or what gets unlocked within me. So there's two answers to the question. One of which is, for me, it's about finding whatever method speaks to you. I don't have a one that I would recommend to people over another. For me, I've used many, many different opportunities to get unlocked or to open something or to see something. And I didn't take my first plant medicine ceremony with psychedelics until I was in my 60s. I'm 64 now. And I'd been doing meditation and breath work and drumming and chanting and primal screaming and, sweating and all the stuff for years and years and years. All of it had been helpful. And then something happened for me with plant medicine. Something happened for me with mistletoe and kanna, and I didn't even understand what was happening in my mind and in my body, but it connected me to something deep within. That thing that was deep within is always there. That's what the yogis have been telling us from the Indian subcontinent for 3,000 years. Like they know this. For me, the saints, the Christian saints, the mystics, all of the people who are able, the poets, Picasso, the people who are able to open the door and see this deeper place in ourselves. Jung talks about it. The myths talk about it. When we see it, when we open to it, the next thing then is to say, okay, how do I integrate this? How do I make this work in a way that becomes transformative for who I become from here? So for me, it's opening the door on the one hand and then the practice, the practice, the practice.
So I think about how years ago, how we came from an ape to the way we are now. And I think, of course, mushrooms growing out of a cow pack were involved, or someone just eating a bit of tree bark, which would be known as the ayahuasca plant, or somebody licking the frog, eating the frog by mistake. Like when you think about what the power of these drugs do now, and you think how we evolved so quickly from ape to who we are, no doubt psychedelics are involved. And over the years, as you know, people get, when something is so profound and people find out about it, people take it away, whether it's gold, whether it's diamonds. It's just the way it works. And so it's almost like the American government years ago found out about how people have these essentially superpowers to predict the future and find where somebody died and where the gold is and where the person was kidnapped. Like psychics can do that, right? Which basically means all institutions like police and government and no longer needed, because if you can go to a psychic and find where this child was kidnapped to, why do you need a police to investigate and spend hours and hours and hours doing their job? And there was a story of this psychic having this feeling of this woman trapped in another country, and he got on a plane and he drove out there and he was like, you've got this person in your back room, and she was there, and this person come from another part of the country, and it's like, well, police would never have found that. So these drugs are banned for a reason. And is it good in terms of managing population, and what would happen if there was no society that was managed? Would we just kill ourselves and like go to war and just rob and everything? Or, you know, at what point will it all come back where we can experiment this without losing the stability of society?
That's a super good question. It's significant. If you think about the fact that just in the field of psychedelics, not the paranormal field, but just specifically in the field of medicine and compounds that have been around in various forms for thousands of years with practitioners who know the practice, who are trained in it, who this is not just something they did while on a lark on a weekend. This is something that's a practice that's old, that's understood. And then when that made it into the West in the 60s and early 70s, people's perception of the world and their place in it began to change. And we see that with the psychedelic movement. We see it with music. We see it with protests. We see it with questions. And that was the reason why the government in here in the U.S. decided to classify these drugs as a threat to society, because it is a threat to society. But
Yeah.
these threats to society have always happened. Every time the revolutionaries come, every time the visionary comes, every time somebody says, that's just a story. Like, I don't believe that. There's another way to be. I mean, I think about the civil rights movement in the South in the United States in the 1950s. The fact that people of color said, I want to be able to vote. That's all I'm asking for. I want to be able to vote. And they were knocked down and lynched and dragged through the streets over and over and over. It's just because they were upsetting the power structure. This is no different than that. Why was Jesus executed as an enemy of the state? Because he threatened the power structure. It happens over and over and over. So at some level, isn't it clear that that's how this works? This being human in culture works, and cultures have something rises up, and it's beautiful, and people are attracted to it, and they build something around it. And then what do? We build rules and regulations and walls, and then we don't want anybody to change anything, and then we have to have another shift and then another shift. That's just how this works.
So another drug on my list to do is ketamine. Don't really know too much about it and what it does, but I have heard that in the medical field, it is being used in small doses to help depression and anxiety. And on the radio the other day, I heard a mother calling in saying that there should be a complete ban on ketamine and it should be upgraded to a class A drug because her 18-year-old child overdosed at university. And so what's happened is that you've got something that, if misused, like anything, is going to be bad. And then you've got the other side of that drug, which is the amazing effects that this drug could do. And so what happens is that if we don't manage something with government and regulation, people go off market and there's no regulation, there's no control, there's no management of dosage, there's no side effects, there's no like side effect manuals, there is no care, aftercare. If something happens, like when I was at the festival, they know people are doing drugs there, and there was a tent, a care tent, where if you need to go there to get your drug tested, or you need to sit down, or you need to have water, people would do it. And so as a result, you've got this 18-year-old kid just taking this thing, has no idea what's in it because it's not regulated and sold properly, and then she dies. And then people start calling for ban on these drugs, and it's like, we're missing the point here. So you're right. At what point does the pressure from these new, call it awakened people, start rising up so much that small changes happen from little cracks until, as you say, now it's flipped. Now we're going left as opposed to going right for 50 years, like with any change in society.
I think that this happens over and over and over, and I get that the need to ban or to somehow regulate because we're afraid of danger. It totally makes sense. I get that. That's real. The flip side of that is we are so conditioned, at least in the culture that I come from here in the US, we're so conditioned to be afraid. Like in many, many ways, that's the basis of the script is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of what can go wrong, fear of who's going to come and kill me, fear of what I'm going to do that's going to hurt myself or somebody else. When people are able to move out of a script that's based in fear and they're into a belief system and a way of being that is based in the faith that co-creation and collaboration can create good things, I don't mean sit in a field and stare at a daisy. That's good too. I love to sit in a field and stare at a daisy. But I mean, like, for real, perfectly intelligent, wise people who can be aware that there are dangers, can be aware that there are things that can go wrong, and at the same time say, but we're going to chance it anyway. We're going to risk collaboration. We're going to risk creation. That's a balanced approach that actually can create new ways of being. And that's what has to happen in order for us to evolve and to get better.
And on TV the other day, they were also talking about, on a news show, a conversation chat show, that the food industry needs to be held more accountable. And rather than having things just on the back where you can't really see it, have it on the front, but actually go further than that and stop putting shit in all this food. And I was thinking, it's never going to happen, because everything is run on these big institutions connected with the pharmaceutical institution and healthcare. It's not as easy as saying, okay, well, here's the problem. Now we need a solution. Just like my child died of a ketamine overdose, now ban the damn thing. It is not as simple as that. The same as when I look at like gun rights in America, people are scared that if you take the guns away, then they've got no protection. So I get it. They're living in fear. And so they're letting that fear drive the narrative. But like anything, if you are in that fear mindset, you're going to be literally attracting those circumstances to happen. So they would be attracting a burglar to come in so they can use their gun to say, this is why I need a gun. So when you break this all down, it comes down to how you see the same situation. Okay, it's both right, but it's how you see it. And, you know, like yin and yang, maybe there is not just one, it is both at all times. There is the awakened culture, and then there'll be the AI culture. There'll be the natural hippie culture, and then there'll be the robotic culture. There'll be the gun culture and the non-gun culture. Maybe it's just both at all times, and unless you are around long enough, do you then realize that whether it's left or right, Republican, Democrat, yin and yang, it's not, oh, well, it should always be Republican or always be Democrat. It's no, you need that both fluctuation. It's almost like to give you hope for the next day in a life where there's just no purpose apart from just do what you're doing now. Maybe.
Yeah, I completely agree. That need for a larger viewpoint when we're afraid. I mean, this is just basic to human nature, and it's basic to animal nature. When we're afraid, we attack or we hide. Like, that's how human beings work. That's how animals work. But all of the great spiritual traditions and all of the great thinkers around psychology and human development are clear that we can move past that animal nature of saying, I'm afraid, so I either have to attack you, I have to make you bad, I have to vote against you, I have to defeat you, I have to kill you, or I have to hide, I have to run, I have to somehow defend myself, I have to go be far away where you can't hurt me. Everybody who understands and thinks about the deepest part of what it means to be fully human, not in our animal, but in our humanness, that for me and my practice is very much about being human and being this other part of ourselves, this soul part of ourselves that is also what we are being in our bodies. When we can move into a place of hope and the possibility of collaboration, and we're not just acting out of fear, then something else can happen, as you were saying, as opposed to just, this is my day and I'm going through it and this is what I got and I'm just going to try and make it through it. And some days, I mean, let's face it, the most spiritually enlightened and awakened and hopeful person in the world sometimes has the day or the week or the month or the year where all they're doing is just trying to get through it, because it's hard, because being human is hard, period. That's how it is. But when we're willing to take the risk of moving outside of that, that's when beauty can happen. That's when possibility can happen.
So obviously growing up when we're children, we've got no aches, no broken bones, there's no pain, there's no clicking, there's no joints. And we think, oh, life is great. So we run around, we backflip, we do handstands, and we just get up and we move on. And as I'm getting older, I am as mobile as I used to be, but I am aware that there are certain things I cannot just do, like a random flip in the street like I used to, because if I do injure myself, it could be worse than what it might have been when I was younger, and it might take a little longer to heal before. And if I've got like a job or a family to look after, I can't be injured. And so I make smarter decisions as I get older. And I asked my parents the other day, as you getting older, do you feel any different? And they're twice as old as me. And they go, no, they don't really feel much different. And then you've got the other hand of people where they're in pain and life is a misery, and they use these pains to reaffirm their misery. And so just by thinking about all the things that life will be in the future, the pain as well as the comfort, it is not, I need to be comfortable all the time. People are getting wrinkles on their face. I'm seeing people getting like Botox and fillers and laser and all that type of shit. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Your face looks nice. But at some point that is going to stop. Are you going to keep doing that forever? And then when you do stop, it's going to be a fucking shock when you see your face that you've not seen in like 5-10 years, just droop, right? And so is it just about embracing the shit and the good in life together? So sometimes I wake up and I've got no pain. Sometimes I wake up, I've got a stiff neck. Oh, for fuck's sake, what am I going to do? I move on with the pain rather than, oh, why can't life just be good all the time? It is that balance of there's a storm and it wipes your house out and you've just done the garden and you've got to do it again. And then when it's really sunny, you enjoy the garden. The wisdom of life says it is both at all times. Don't focus on either one. Ride the wave and stay neutral.
Absolutely. The Buddha says the first thing you need to understand is that life is suffering. Like that's part of what it means to be human. Part of what it means to be human is to have the aches and the pains. And I've got this thing in my neck that you were just talking about, or I'm worried about this thing about the money, or I'm worried about whatever. So when we accept that being human involves not only joy and comfort, like you were talking about, but also pain and suffering, that's true, then our suffering gets less because we're not obsessed about why is it like this? Why is my life like this? This isn't fair. Da, 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 da. Like our attachment to what we wish were so, or our attachment to what we wish were not so, makes us suffer more when we accept that life is life on life's terms. And that's one of the things they talk about in recovery. It's one of the things they talk about in many, many spiritual paths, to say, this is the life that's been given to me. Some of it sucks. Some of it's awful. Some of it's terrible. Maybe that's all for me. Maybe it's a gift for me. Maybe there's something I can learn in this. Maybe this is for me. But either way, fighting it is just going to make me more miserable. So how can I show up and see what I can create given exactly what's in front of me and exactly what's within me?
My mum is very like health conscious, like I am. Vitamins, exercise, fasting, water, hydrogenated water, no fluoride in the toothpaste, whatever. And my dad is just nothing, just living life like an ape, right? And he's never ill. He's always happy. My mum's never ill and she pretty much is always happy. But I said to them last night, on your deathbed, are we going to realize all these vitamins and all these red light therapies and fastings and saunas and steam rooms and cold water showers and no fluoride in your toothpaste? It's a load of bollocks. Like, it doesn't actually make that much difference overall, because, you know, the whole point is that you hopefully live longer or you feel better now. But if you compare two people, I wonder who's going to get to the end of their life and be like, well, I had a better life than you because of all the stuff that I did. And I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I could choose both paths. I've seen my dad just get on with it and there's no negative energy. He's always happy. He's amongst community. He doesn't eat obsessively, loves being happy. And that's good. It seems to be like that is enough. Just having the basics of community, not eating bad and exercising. It could be that that is all we need in life. And if you think about what we're not getting now, community, exercise, and we're eating shit, that we use all these other things to essentially balance out what should be happening already. So is all the stuff that I do, my mushroom drinks, going to end up being just a waste of time and money? Or do we just stay natural and go to the basics of what life was 100 years ago, and that is it?
The thing that's so interesting about your question, and I'm totally tracking with it, is on the one hand, yes, it's really, really good to pay attention to what I put in my body. Yes, it's really, really good to pay attention to how I feel about what's happening in my body. It's really good to pay attention to, am I getting enough sleep? Am I drinking enough water? Am I exercising? Am I just walking? Am I just out in nature? Am I under the sky? All those things are super, super important. And as soon as we become obsessive, like we've lost the point, right?
Mm.
As soon as that for me is the tipping point with like, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. Anything that I say, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. That's a for me that's a red flag to say, wait a minute, what's this really about? Is this about fear? Is it about control? Is it about a mania? Is it about trying to fix something by doing this here and this? It's really about this over here. So for me, part of what we're talking about too is we're in a culture that is so obsessive. Here in the US, I think in the Western world, in the whatever developed quote unquote world, we're just obsessive about, I have to have this, I need this, I'll be happy if this. It's all upside down. It's not that. It's the balance that you were talking about.
So interesting because the worry behind I must take my vitamins, I must go to the gym, I must have my ice bath, I must have my mushroom tea, going into that state of what you could say is fear of the unknown or fear of what happens if I don't, fear of getting ill if I don't take my vitamins. Well, science says you will get ill if you don't take your vitamins because that belief system is so powerful to us that your body will go into a state where it will attract a disease to say, here's why you take your vitamins, right? And so is it the state that we're getting? As you said, it's how we get obsessed with what we do or don't do, that's the issue, and not the action that we are doing or should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Because my dad just fucking lives his life. He doesn't think about anything negative. Just get on with it. Someone dies, grieve, move on. That's life, right? Not sitting in sorrow of, oh, didn't say anything. Like, it's called life. He just gets on with it and he lives his life, and there is no second thought. He is
Mhm.
sort of present and moving with the sun. Whereas, say, other people will be, okay, well, I need to take my vitamins at this time. I need to do exercise in the morning. And if I don't do exercise, then I'm thinking about it all day at work and how I've got to
Right.
do it after work. And then I'm thinking
Right.
about when am I going to cook food because I need to do my Pilates. And then I'm eating late and I can't eat late because I've got to go to bed not on an empty stomach 3 hours before I go to bed. Because then if I fast, I'm not going to break my 16-hour cycle until 3 tomorrow. And it's like all fucked up. And that nervous state is what's destroying us, not these things that we are doing, So maybe my dad knows this and he'll end up being the winner. And he always says it's the worrying that is the problem about the thing you're trying to do to stay happy and healthy.
I mean, I think your dad already is the winner. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think could we just hire him to be our spiritual teacher? Do you know what I mean? Like, he's just like living his life. Like, that's when Jesus says, I want you to look at flowers and want you to look at birds. They're not worried. You're worried. That's the problem. And then what do? We build cathedrals and machinery and big, all the da 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 that we obsess about and worry about. It's worry, it's preoccupation. To go back to the Buddha, that's the suffering. It's our obsession with the thing that we think will keep us safe or that will make us happy. And it won't. Like, that's not real. It might in the short run. Like, I like the dopamine hit when I eat a piece of, is that dopamine? When I eat a piece of chocolate, I like the thing. When I buy
Yeah.
something, do you know what I mean? And I like buying it. I feel good about it and I'm holding it and it's terrific. And then I give them the credit card and then I go home and then I have the thing. That is just a hit. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not the path. The path is much more about saying, this is the day I'm in. This is the moment I'm in. This is what's in front of me. What does it have to teach me? How do I want to show up? And just keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. The obsession and the worry. That's what drives us crazy. And then we just run to the next thing. Do you know the American film, God, from 80 something, Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner? There's a scene in it where the wise teacher in the movie, sort of the James Earl Jones, who was the voice of Darth Vader, who plays like the wise Gandalf teacher kind of. It takes place in Iowa. It's in the Midwest in the U.S. and it says it's about baseball, but it's not about baseball. And he says, "Do you know what the problem with people is? They have money, they don't have peace. They have money they have, peace they lack. Like we have the stuff. It's not doing it. It's the peace that we lack." And going back to the thing that you asked earlier about psychedelics, for me, whatever practice will open the door to what's within will help me be more peaceful. At first, it'll screw me up and get me stirred up because I'm looking at pain or I'm looking at trauma or I'm looking at loss. But that's true with meditation. It's true with contemplative prayer. It's true with journaling. It's true with drumming. It's true with anything that will get me into my body. At first, I'm going to freak out. First, I'm going to be scared. First, I'm going to be like disoriented because I haven't spent a lot of time there. It's just new territory. That's all. But in that place of peace and in that place of going within, which your dad has clearly mastered, right? That's the path. That's the path. That's it.
So someone called Dwayne Dyer or Wayne Dyer, he's a spiritual person, and you've got Bob Proctor and Joe Dispenza, right? So there's an interesting thing. You'd think that these people with the wisdom that they know would have lived forever. And it's like Wayne Dyer, I believe, died of cancer. Bob Proctor died of, I think it was heart disease related to COVID or whatever, right? And then you look at Joe Dispenza, and he is stressed as an individual. He looks older than he is. So they're living and breathing the practices that they are teaching. They want more, so then they try and teach and save the world. And as a result, they are under enormous stress to run a business, to keep up a brand, to manage employees, that they end up dying of the same disease that you would have died from if you didn't take your vitamins in the morning. What is that disease? That disease is stress. So when these people died, not Joe Dispenza, but when these people died, it was like, okay, this doesn't make sense because they're teaching about basically enlightenment, living forever, but they died of the same shit my mum and dad and grandparents and neighbor and the postman are going to die from. Why? What's the common denominator? It's stress. It's maybe lack of sleep. It's long hours. And they look at my dad, just happy with normal money, just living his life, saying, just moving up and down, not running and exercising and getting his heartbeat up to 400 million beats per minute. He's just walking around, work, saying hello, meeting people, being positive, being happy, holding no judgments, no regrets, forgiving everyone immediately. No stress. And he's the happiest.
Exactly. Here's the trick about all these people now that are wanting us to wear a thing that measures the things and all the things, and then we keep a journal, and then we
I know what you're going to say.
managing the da. Guess what? Every single one of those people will die, as will every other human being. Like, that's the deal. And none of us can control when that happens unless we take care of it ourselves. Like, unless we choose that for ourselves. Otherwise, nobody can predict how long their life is going to be. And speaking of these great spiritual masters, as Jesus says, and who among you by worrying could add an inch to your height? Who among you could, control the future? There's no controlling the future. So what can we do? To your point, if what we're doing is stressing about how we want to control what we want to keep away from ourselves, then we're drawing it toward ourselves. Period. It's just energetics. Like, that's just attraction. That's just how it is. And if we let go, like, one of the most important things we can do is to embrace our own death. Like, embrace our own end. Embrace that this life is precious now. My wife's 54-year-old cousin this past weekend, perfect health, married, kids, had a stroke. A couple of days later, they had to let him go. His brain was swelling. He wasn't going to make it. Like, that's real right now. They had a lovely home. They have a lovely life. The deal is that we don't get out of here alive. That's not even a thing. So what are we going to do with the time that we have, and how are we going to live it?
So I had an Apple Watch. I sent that back. I had a Whoop. I sent that back. Every morning I'd check, and every morning I'd make sure I go through everything and mark off, have I been in the sauna? Have I had food before bed? And I suddenly became aware that I'm getting sucked into this, not to mention the electromagnetic field that comes off these damn things, which people say is bad. So it's like, I'm trying to get good sleep, because if I get good sleep, I live longer. And as a result, I'm obsessing about how I have to be in bed by this time to get this amount of sleep, and how I only got 2.5 hours REM versus an hour and 15 of REM, right? And now I'm stressing about that. And so I'm trying to go to sleep the next night. I can't, because it's too fucking early to go to sleep. But the app says I have to. But I'm like, I'm wired. I don't need 10 hours sleep. And so you put all these things in place. My dad just goes to bed when he wants to go to bed. He'll watch TV. There's no, oh, it's 11 o'clock on the dot. He'll just watch TV. He'll go to bed. And when he wakes up, he just he goes back to work. So, you know, if we just live life as it is, look at the bird rather than trying to build a cathedral to bring 1,000,000 birds in, so they look at 1,000,000 birds and then get stressed building the damn thing and trying to find suppliers and contractors and builders and getting contract signs. And he's pissed off and he's left early and like, oh God, like who's going to build the cathedral? We're missing the point here of just living life rather than trying to extend life. Like we just have to live it.
Yes. And and it's so great that you laid that out. The thing about I need to check this so that I can make sure about this so that I will whatever. As they say in Star Wars, it's a trap. Like it's a for real trap. Like it's a trap. Like, and all of these companies and all of these developers and all of these systems, they want us to buy this, like literally to buy it and in our minds to buy it. They want us to get caught up in anxiousness, which will then cause us to spend money. Like that's the trap. And all we have to do is say, or I could just take a walk, or I could just sit, or I could just be with friends, or I could read a book, or I could journal, or I mean, there's a lot of free stuff, you know what I mean? That's perfectly good that we could just take advantage of and enjoy. I'm not saying that these things are bad. I have a watch, I have a car. I'm talking on this beautiful technology that enables you and me to have this lovely chat. And can we keep the main thing the main thing? The main thing is not all this stuff and all of this preoccupation and all of this stress. The main thing is to go within and find treasure. Like that's where it's at. That's where it's at.
Okay. If you had one thing that you could say to the rest of the world before you died, what would that one thing be?
You're enough.
Okay.
Period.
And is there anything you want to promote or plug before we finish?
I love working with people. I work with clients all over the world. Just go to drrickdiamond.com. I'd love to meet you and see what's happening with you so that we can walk your journey together.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please remember to subscribe, turn the bell notifications on, like the episode, and comment below. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's YesKingOliver. Take a look at the other videos to your side. And if you just want to listen to this podcast, you can do so on Apple and Spotify and most other platforms by going to talkwitholiver.com.